All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lori, and I am the career specialist on the Dahlonega campus. And I'm joined today by our fantastic director, Diane Farrell, who's our co-host. Thank you, Diane, for joining us. And so we have a really great lineup of speakers today for our Breaking Barriers career chat, talking about representation and why it matters. And these folks, I mean, their job is to make sure that they have an inclusive and diverse workforce, and we're just so excited to have them come and talk to us about their career journey, as well as how you can find a truly diverse and inclusive workplace, because a lot of times we may find that companies kind of just slap that on their website, but then it doesn't really follow through when it comes to real life. So we want to find out, how do you find those places that truly value their employees? So I'm going to kick it off first and introduce, going from left to right. So Monique Jenkins, she is with Team Georgia Careers, and she is a double certified senior human resources professional, that's a challenge to get those kind of certifications. So she is definitely well versed in her field. She has over 15 years of experience in the public and private sectors. Her industries experience include retail, healthcare, and of course the Georgia state government. And she currently serves as the Senior Manager of Enterprise Talent Management Services for the Georgia Department of Administrative Services, where she leads a team of consultants that work with state agency HR leaders to help them attract, hire, develop, and retain talent. That's always the tricky one there, is how do you keep that talent? Monique has an affinity for community service and volunteers with several organizations. Professionally, she is a volunteer leader with the Society of Human Resources Management on a national, state, and local affiliate level. So she stays a little busy in addition to her regular job. And so next up is Nicholas Pratt. So he's an associate that sits on the campus recruiting team at BlackRock, which is located in the Atlanta iHub. And in this role, Nicholas supports the firm's hiring and diversity goals by recruiting top talent and democratizing opportunities to underrepresented populations in the summer intern and full-time analyst programs. He leads the development of early identification programs, including the Thurgood Marshall College Fund internship and the BlackRock Halleck Scholarship Program. Prior to joining BlackRock, Nicholas was a member of the campus recruiting team at Warner Media, supporting the internship hiring for HBO and CNN. And during his time there, he developed their HBCU strategy and developed programming for events such as the NABJ National Convention. And Nicholas attended the University of Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where he received a bachelor's degree in Africana Studies. He's passionate about social justice and spends much of his time outside enjoying music, art, film, and travel. So it sounds like he stays pretty busy as well. And then last but certainly not least is Stephanie Peace James. She is a talent acquisition sourcer for Marel Inc., which is the leader in food processing solutions. Stephanie began her professional career actually as a paralegal, so she's made some career transitions in her time. Her last position in this role was with a top 5 accounting firm in New York, heading up their immigration process. She then decided to go into business for herself, where she was able to lead a group of salespeople and was able to become one of the top sales directors for the firm. And she then relocated to Georgia in 2005, where she started off in Gwinnett County Schools, working as a college and career advisor, where she helped students earn over $6 million in scholarships, including the 6 Gates Millennium Full Ride Scholarships, which were won by diverse and minority students. And so now she is with Marel. And of course, as you can see by her photo, she is definitely hiring at Marel. So definitely have a lot of opportunities there. So all of these wonderful people are joining us today, and so excited for that. And so now that we've done our fantastic introductions, Nicholas, I'm going to turn it over to you first and share just a little bit more about your career journey and your current role.
Hey, Lori,
Yes, yes.
can I pause 1 minute to
Sure.
do the poll for the students? Thank you.
I'd
Let's see
forget.
if I can launch the right thing.
It should be the first one.
Okay. There we go.
Excellent.
Can everybody see it?
Yep, yep. So let us know, everyone, before we really get into this. So thank you, Diane. This is why we have a co-host, because I just tend to rattle right on. So what would you like to learn about our panelists? So learning some more details about their careers, so the hurdles that they experienced and how they overcame them, tips for college success, and strategies for career success. Because I'm sure that they have some great recommendations on all of those things. So you can choose as many as you want. That's a multiple choice. And I'll give you just a few more seconds so that way you can have a moment to submit that.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and then share the results. Seems like everybody's interested in hearing everything. And, but in particular, strategies for career success, which I'm sure will come through since we're hearing from recruiters who can truly give great information about how to get hired. So, all right, we will move on.
All right, thank you again. So back to you, Nicholas. So talking about that career success. So talking about your career journey and your current role, and give us a little bit more information about that.
No, sure. And thank you for asking, and also good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate y'all being here with us and having me here with you. So like Lori said, I am a campus recruiter here at BlackRock. I've been actually in like the talent acquisition space for just about 3 years. I started right when the pandemic was kicking off. So it was an interesting time to be transitioning into recruiting when everybody was transitioning home and not, being on campus and stuff. But prior to that, I'd spent the bulk of my career actually in nonprofit and like the I'd call it educational adjacent space, right? Doing a lot of youth development, working with college students, with elementary, middle, high school students. I've pretty much worked with everyone who is in some type of public school or on trying to matriculate out to college. Most recently with an organization called the Posse Foundation. And so if you're here from the Atlanta area, you may be familiar with some of the work that they're doing and their scholarship. And so I was a trainer there for quite a while. And I don't know, I got into wanting to work with younger people because of the people who worked with me when I was growing up. It started, I'd say, going back to my childhood, both from my community. I'm from Texas, and athletics are really, really big there. We send probably, I think the stat is like 80% of D1 college students to school from our state, right? And so there's a really, really big focus on athletics, on playing games and sports and stuff like that. And so I had a lot of really, really compassionate people in my life looking after me and helping me grow, right? And from there, I don't think that stopped. I went on to college. I went to the University of Pittsburgh. I'm, again, from Texas. I didn't know anybody there, like no one at all, no one from my hometown. Like I had no community really when I got there. And I'm personable and outgoing, so I met people on campus, but I feel like I really was able to be seen, and I think like in a unique kind of adult way for the first time in our Department of Student Life, right? And like wanting to be able to get back to that space and work with other people in that range in their lives where they might feel the same way that I felt, and needing somebody to both see them and maybe be able to provide support in whatever way it might be, really, really encouraged and influenced a lot of the decisions that I made that have brought me to this place now. And I loved my time working in nonprofit and working in orgs like the Posse Foundation. but also like paying my rent. And I make a little bit more money now in talent acquisition, but I still get an opportunity to do a lot of the same things and a lot of the same work. And it's really, really cool. I'm working on a couple of like I said, early ID programs here. Some of them that do have a scholarship component to them, right? But all of them kind of targeted at identifying populations that are historically underrepresented in our firm and trying to provide more opportunities for them to get not just a foot in the door, but long-term development, building relationships and connections that'll carry them throughout their careers, right? And so I'm really, really excited about being able to do this work in the spaces that I've been able to do it, especially CNN it's CNN. I'm sure y'all are familiar with the name, right? Like it's a super impactful organization. BlackRock, we manage quite a bit of assets. We need to get into the details, but it's a lot, right? And so we have the ability, I think, to influence a lot of what goes on in the world. And so being able to have more hands and more minds and more experiences involved in some of that decision making, right? I think is ridiculously impactful, and I'm really, really honored to be able to do it. I hope that answered your question, Lori. I, like you, can get a little, I could just roll. So please reel me in if you need to.
No, that was fantastic. I mean, but all of our speakers have such a wide range of experiences. And I mean, I just gave a quick snippet. Otherwise, you'd hear me talk forever introducing you. So I'm now going to turn it over to Monique, because I know there was a lot more that I didn't cover. And so that way you can kind of fill in some of those blanks there with your career journey and how you got to where you are.
Thank you, Lori, and good afternoon, everyone. Let me apologize in advance for my voice. I am dealing with a little bit of sinus and allergy issues. But I'm Monique Jenkins, and I'll start with kind of where I came from and where I am now, and I'll kind of end with my current role. I'm originally from Mississippi. I was born and raised there. And my career journey started right out of high school. I enlisted in the Army. And so I didn't have that traditional college student route to school and to career. So I spent a couple of years in the Army. And then when I left the Army, I moved back to Mississippi and went to Mississippi University for Women, which is where I received my bachelor's degree. And I knew very early, you can probably tell, that service was something that I wanted to do. So I started my career in service to our country. And then when I graduated from college, I went to the private sector, but I got to the private sector because it was important for me to have an internship. And I was very fortunate to find my internship through En-ROADS, which is a national organization focused on providing internship opportunities to minority and underrepresented students. And at the time, En-ROADS did not actually recruit at my university. We weren't big enough. But I stumbled across them because I knew the importance of an internship very early in my career, and was fortunate to get my internship in human resources. I knew that I wanted to be in human resources. I actually knew that, just like I knew I wanted to serve my country. And so I chose my career path when I was in high school. I think I was actually 16 when I chose HR as my career path. So when I left the military, and let me just say, HR was not my MOS when I was in the military. I did something completely different. But when I left the military and went to college, I did earn my business administration degree, and then I did my internship, and that introduced me to the world of work. And we'll talk about why internships are important, but that really introduced me to the world of work, and also really introduced me to women leaders, which was, and not only women leaders, but Black women leaders. And so that kind of helped me set the kind of path for leadership that I started my journey on and helped me kind of become the kind of leader that I wanted to be. So I started in the private sector, and I worked for a very large retail organization for about 2 years in Mississippi. And then I moved to Georgia in 2009, and I have been here ever since. And when I moved to Georgia, I started working for the state of Georgia, which was not part of my path, right? It was not my goal because although I love to serve like Nicholas, I needed to be able to pay my bills and pay back some of those student loans. So, working for the government was not part of my 5-year plan, but I found myself with the state of Georgia, and I stayed with the state of Georgia for a couple of years, and then I left. And hopefully, if we have time, I can talk about that story because it is an interesting story. But I left and went back to the private sector and really started my path as an HR professional. I actually started in talent acquisition. So talent acquisition is my space. I've come full circle, but I started in talent acquisition, recruiting college students. I actually built the first university relations program for that retail employer that I worked for. So I love being in the college space. But then I left the private sector and I found myself back in the state of Georgia. That was by accident. I had no plans to come back to the state of Georgia, but I asked for something very specific in my prayers, and the opportunity presented itself, and I needed to take it. It just happened to be with the state of Georgia. And 8 years later, here I am. So I am currently the senior manager for Enterprise Talent Management Services with the Georgia Department of Administrative Services. But I represent all of the opportunities available within the state of Georgia under the executive branch, under the Team Georgia Careers umbrella. So my job is really threefold. University relations is a big part of my job, and why I'm here today on this panel. So really being an ambassador for state employment and making sure that individuals understand the opportunities that are available to them within state government. We often get left behind. Many people think about government and they think federal and federal and local, and they don't think about the state, but we are that big, huge piece in the middle that's serving Georgia citizens every day. And so part of my job is to talk to students like you and individuals and introduce you to those career opportunities. I've built my career in state government, and it's been great. I have had the opportunity to work for 4 different state agencies, and I've grown my career from being a talent acquisition specialist to now being a program manager. So once again, hopefully we'll be able to talk about that, but that's a little bit about me. I think I answered that question.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I really appreciate it. And it looks like Stephanie is just about to join us. So Nicholas, I'll turn it over to you while Stephanie gets her sound going and all that great stuff. I don't see her just yet. So are you there, Stephanie? Oh, there she is. I see her moving around now.
Okay.
Yeah, you'd have to unmute yourself, Stephanie.
That'd be nice. I'm sorry, so dark. I literally had to pull over into a parking lot to get on it this time. Atlanta traffic is terrible.
Yes, it is. Yes, I'm sure Monique and Nicholas know all about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh God.
So
Yeah.
Stephanie, actually, since you're here, let me go ahead really quick. I've already done some introductions. So I was just asking the first question, if you could tell us a little bit more about your career journey and your current role.
Okay, so that's an interesting path. I'll give you the short version. I initially thought that I wanted to be a paralegal many moons ago. I was encouraged by a high school teacher. So the first part of my professional life started there, and I worked for the top 5 accounting firm in New York City, and I was in charge of their immigration process. I left there after becoming very sick from stress, that'll factor into the story later, and began my own business in sales. It's something I never thought that I would do, nor did I think I was good at. Never worked with women and did not want to. I was a corporate baby, but I quickly discovered that I did love working with women, and I was inspired by their passion and their vision and what we were able to achieve together. And from there, I relocated to Georgia, and I was asked to work in the school system as a college and career advisor. And that was really a paycheck of the heart. I enjoyed that thoroughly. very much so. Helping the kids to win scholarships, helping them to see what they could be, really finding their passion in life. That was something I enjoyed tremendously for about 5 years, until they decided the football team was more important than scholarships, and they abolished the program. So I sat home as a Gigi for a while, raised my granddaughter for 2 years. I loved that. That was the most fun I've ever had. Taught her sign language, and returned back to the working world. First as a property manager, and then where I am now, working for Marel as a recruiter. And I have to say, I never thought I'd use my skill set at all in this arena, but I have absolutely enjoyed the past year and a half working for Marel.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I hope you're okay in a good, safe place, parking space there.
Yes, doors locked. I'm at the
Yeah.
airport.
Oh, oh goodness. Well, Nicholas, I'll go ahead now and take it on to the next topic, and really thinking about, I mean, college is tough enough as it is, and then a lot of times, especially for underrepresented populations, there are extra stresses and challenges kind of thrown on top of that. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about any of the challenges that you faced in college, and how did you handle those?
Yeah, definitely. So I went to college during the aughts, right? I graduated high school in 2006. I graduated college in 2010. I'm really dating myself, but it's cool. It's fine. I just turned 35 in December. I'm feeling pristine, whatever. It's good. We here. Um, but yeah, so I went to school then when Facebook was kind of just coming around. Um, there was no Instagram yet. Twitter was developed, I think, sometime midway through that point, right? And so I raise all of that to say, like, the connectivity that exists in the world right now we weren't there yet, and as I mentioned, I went to school very, very far away from home. Pittsburgh to Fort Worth in a drive is about 12 hours or so. And so not easy for my family to get to me, definitely not easy for my poor friends to get to me, right? And so being able to build community was like extremely important. And I'm someone who thrives in community. And so that was like an essential part of my survival, right? And it's funny to say because I think about my freshman year being there, I was in a dorm it was formerly an asylum that was like repurposed into a dorm. And so pretty much all of the rooms were singles. And like at the end of the halls, there were suites, like, because orderlies lived in the end of the halls back when it was an asylum, right? So it was built up like that. But I didn't live in a suite. I lived in a single in the middle of the, middle of the floor by myself. I made a couple of friends on my floor, but also I don't know, it was when you're in college, it takes a minute to really start to find that community that's yours, right? And so a couple of friends on my floor, but it paled in comparison to what I was used to. And so, getting involved in in our Black Student Union on campus, eventually getting involved in my fraternity. Um, I was really involved in our radio station. Like, I was finding opportunities to engage with my community, like with my campus community, that were tied back to the things that I was passionate about. I think in the long run, that really, really, really helped me on the career end. Because as a recruiter, right, like, I know one of the main things that we're looking for here at my firm, at somebody as junior as many of you all on this call would be, is demonstrated leadership, right? And so, like, literally putting yourself out there, taking on opportunities to do the things that you love, but doing them at a higher level, at a more formal level. You know, those skills really, really help me. They help me quite a bit. And not just to be able to talk about how I got hired. I mean, how I matriculated, and how I might talk to a student or look at a resume to, specifically get hired for this role. But like generally just thinking about, you know, again, my own survival, my own being able to connect and create opportunities, etc., across the spaces that I would find myself in. Like it was the lifeline that I needed. There's no sun in Pittsburgh, right? There's a lot of things to keep you sad, you know what I mean? And so you had to really, really be able to find your spaces and your places. Like there were, oh man, there was some adversity that went on for me on campus. And so like, I really, really think about these connections and these relationships that I was able to build and how they were able to keep me grounded and hold me down when I needed that, really, really, really life-changing relationships. And as you will all learn, as you continue to grow and move through life, like your relationships are extremely important, and they're like plants too, right? Like you have to water them, you have to nurture them, you have to shine light on them, so that they can grow, or they'll die, you know what I mean? And then you can't do anything with them. And unlike a plant, a dead relationship can be so much more detrimental than a dead plant, right? Like, so you really, really, really want to take advantage of the time that you have while you're here and these connections that you're able to make. Like you're meeting people from all across the state of Georgia and probably all across the world, right? Like these are folks that you can have in your life forever, if you so choose. And so, yeah, when I think about my time, like if there's one thing that stood apart from everything else that I experienced, right, it was the learning how to really build a community around myself, with the people that were in my proximity, and really been able to make the most of it.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, and I think, yeah, building that community is just so important, and having that support around you. And so, Monique, thinking about, I mean, you especially being in the military is already kind of your second family. And then of course, when you leave that, there goes, this major support unit. So when you especially were going through college, what were some of the challenges that you faced? One, also just being, a non-traditional student. You weren't the typical 18-year-old. You had that military experience under your belt. So you had different experiences you were bringing to the table. So what were some of the challenges you faced in college? And, how did you handle some of those situations?
Yeah, so thank you for that, Lori. And that was actually one of my biggest challenges, was because I was older than the students who were on campus. So I didn't have that traditional college student experience. Number one, I did not live on campus. Now, that did not keep me from being uber involved like Nicholas. And I went to a small university, and that was by design. So it was really conducive of making relationships and being connected. So I don't think anyone would have ever known that I didn't live on campus because I was on campus so much. But the challenge for me was, because I had already been in the military, I was very focused when I got to college, and I did not take time to really enjoy that experience. I mean, I did almost all the student things, right? So I was very involved in student organizations and volunteer organizations. But I was on a mission to get my degree and get to work. And so I did not take the time to enjoy some of the other things. And I know this question is going to come up, but I really wish that someone had told me, like, Monique, it's okay to actually take the 4 years, because I'm a little older than Nicholas. So when I went to college, I remember when Facebook opened up to everybody else, because when Facebook came along, it was very exclusive to Ivy League schools. So I remember when we finally got it at my university, we were all so happy that we could create Facebook profiles. But my mindset was one of the challenges. I really was like, let me go to school, let me get my degree, let me get to work. And really feeling that, because I was older, because I was a non-traditional student, and at that time, non-traditional students were kind of hidden on campus. They weren't really participating in things. And so in my head, I was telling myself that I didn't really fit into the traditional college student model. Even though I was a first generation college student, even at that time, I was the first in my family to go to college, my immediate family to go to college. So I had to get out of my own head. And I had a great time while I was on campus during undergraduate. School choice is very important. I I chose the right university for me. It opened a lot of doors. It allowed a lot of opportunities. But the challenge was just getting out of my own head and feeling like I needed to be done with the experience and really letting myself enjoy being around other students, younger students, and really kind of indulging in some of that undergraduate college student life. Some, not all.
Right, yeah. Understand, definitely. And so Stephanie, now kind of bringing us a little bit more into where you are now in your current role, and talking about, making sure, of course, that, workplaces are more successful if they have, a more inclusive and diverse workforce. And so how do you make sure as a talent acquisition recruiter that you go out and you meet, all these different folks from all the different walks of life and have them join your team? How do you make sure that you have that kind of truly diverse and inclusive work environment?
Yeah, I'm really a fan of D&I. It's one of the first things that I personally inquired about when I was interviewing for Marel, because one thing that I want everyone to remember on the call is, as you're going on job interviews, you are also interviewing them. You want to make sure it's a great fit for you as well. And so I'll sometimes do little things like wear my hair straight one time, and on the next interview, wear my hair this way, and just watch the reactions and see. That is a very big thing. Thankfully, I'm in a wonderful place, I have to say honestly, but in the past, working for corporate America in New York, there were those who were fired for not wearing their hair a certain way or looking a certain way. And that was then, from a different time. I think I'm older than both of you at this point, just listening to your stories. But for me, D&I is very important. So when I'm out, I don't see color that way. My family, we were raised very different. We are all shades of the rainbow. I probably have more Caucasian people in my family than I do any other thing, but so we just weren't raised that way. And when I'm talking to people, I'm looking to see what they bring to the table. But I also encourage them, because it's an educational process, right? Both ways. So I'm talking to the hiring managers and I'm educating them about what being diverse can do for them, how it can affect their bottom line, what it is that we bring to the table, helping them to get outside of their comfort zone. Because whether or not we all realize it, we all are comfortable with a certain type of person. We normally will gravitate to a certain type of person. And that's just human nature. It has nothing to do with color or ethnicity. So I educate them about what they're missing out on by not broadening their horizons. For instance, here in Gainesville, Georgia, that's a very country area. It is the poultry capital of the world. And then here I come, the Yankee Northerner, right? And I'm usually the loudest one in the room because I blame it on traffic, but that's just me. I'm da, 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 da. They're used to me now. But it took some adjusting. They had to learn who I was, and that I mean no harm, and that they may be a little bit more softer spoken, and the way they speak, it may not be as gestured as I am, but we do have more in common than not. And so I educate them as to what they are bringing to the table. And then on the other hand, when I'm talking to potential employees, I educate them as to how they can now project themselves. Presentation is everything. You have to learn how to walk the walk and talk the talk. You're one way with your friends, right? That's not the same way you want to be in the office necessarily. There is a professional ethic that you want to have about yourself. And so I want them to be approachable. I want them to be approachable so that they can have the conversations that some people are afraid to have. So I'm speaking to them just the way you and I are speaking right now. And a lot of time they'll leave the table and draw back other friends and say, you really talk to her, she's real. She's going to give you the inside story. And that's the beginning of creating that culture with conversations, for me anyway.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think even like you said, just being the northerner in the southern states, already then it's like a bit of a culture shock in terms of how people communicate, and that's great that it's a lot of it is really education and being able to have those challenging conversations and really being able to be in a space where it's safe for you to talk to each other and really support each other and again really just educating each other. And Monique, I know you have to run in a little bit, so I'm going to throw this back to you real quick because I want to get your input on why is it that you think that it is so important for companies to really be aware of their diversity and inclusion efforts, and not just put the little label on their website and, do a little bit more than that. And, what is it that you've seen in your career that has shown that this is why it's so important? This is why representation of all different kinds of human beings is important in the workplace.
Yeah, so here is my take. Diversity is the easy part, right? That is the easy part to check the box on, right? When you think about companies and organizations making sure they have a diverse workplace, they can do that very easily. The hard part is the inclusiveness, right? And we all know that just because we're invited to the party doesn't mean that anybody wants to dance with us. Okay, that's what companies have to work on. And that's the important piece, because that's the piece that if they don't get right, then that will impact ultimately their bottom line. So I work in the public sector. So it impacts us in different ways, right? It means that we don't get to reach some of those citizens that we want to provide services to because they don't see themselves in the language. So we're communicating mostly in English. Well, then we have a whole section of the state, a whole citizenry that we cannot reach. And that's very important because we need to be able to provide those individuals with services. The services are for them. In the private sector, that means that your bottom line is impacted. If you are not inclusive and you don't have those individuals, those diverse individuals that you have hired at the table, then ultimately it translates to things like tone deaf messages going out, retractions being sent, apologies being made, products that are not inclusive, right? And then that ultimately means that your organization, your company is not making the money that they need to make, and they cannot sustain themselves. And in this time and age, that's not somewhere that you want to be, because you will get called out. This generation of students and citizens who are growing up and adults, they are very willing to call that organization out. And now you're going to lose any traction that you may have gained on the diversity front because you weren't including those people. You were bringing them into the organization. The silos still existed. It was still the old boy system, or it was still no Asian leaders. It was still, we don't have any disabled citizens in our leadership. We don't have them on our materials. So what does that say about how truly inclusive we are? And that's where employers need to focus. And for students who are looking at employers, as Stephanie said, it is an interview as well. That's what you need to focus on, because employers can very easily show you how diverse they are. The questions you need to ask is around inclusivity, and that is not as easy to discern until you're in the organization.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. Thank you so much. And yeah, I know for even just for my daughter, if she finds out that a company has done something wrong or, is misbehaved in some way or whatever, and she's, sees that on the news and social media, she's like, I'm not buying from them. She doesn't eat at their restaurant. She doesn't buy their clothing. She's like, nope, not doing it. Because like you said, yeah, people will call them out on it. And that's good. That's a good thing that, people can finally kind of, have that platform to be able to say, hey, that's not right. You're not supposed to be doing that. And so I'm going to throw this to you, Nicholas, thinking about in terms of then how can, fellow employees be an ally to, an underrepresented population? Because a lot of times it's, I of course support my coworkers, but I just don't know how. I don't know what I should do. I don't know what would be appropriate. I don't want to offend anyone. So then they tend to just withdraw altogether and kind of stay in that little silo because it's safer. It's easier to do that. So how can you be an ally to your colleagues that might be in that underrepresented population?
Ooh, shout out to the 2 Black women also on this call before I talk about allyship. Because y'all probably should be talking about it before me. However, I do liken myself to be a strong ally to underrepresented communities. I think a big part about that is being able to create space for these folks and then stepping back, right? As a man, that's something that I have to do often, unless I need to advocate, right? And so I think understanding what battles you can fight, right? Like should fight probably is the better thing, right? Understanding what battles you should fight, and then being particularly thoughtful about how you approach said battles, right? Like that's ridiculously important. I think the other thing, outside of just creating said space or advocating when necessary, being able to listen, right? Folks will tell you what they need. I think we saw something really interesting in 2020 with large corporations really rising to the aid of Black Americans and then of Asian Americans, right? But a lot of the things that I feel like conversations that we had, questions that were asked, or conversations that we have been having for decades, right? I did see a little bit more action this time around, which I thought was amazing. But I just also imagine, like, if folks would have listened to the people who were saying these things 10, 20 years ago, what might have happened in 2020, right? Like, what progress might have we seen? And so when I think about staff at BlackRock, let's go there. I'll be really, really specific. We have a campus ambassador initiative in our Atlanta office. It's one of our regional goals, or I guess I'd say local goals, because so I'll say local goals to our Atlanta office. One of our local goals is to hire Atlanta, right? We want our office to be as close to the makeup of this city as possible. We would like to have as many homebred folks as we can find. And I mean, Monique and Stephanie, we all unicorns here. I mean, we're all not unicorns here, right? Like, we all transplants. And so y'all know that this is difficult sometimes to find local native Atlantans in the city and ready to take on the opportunities. But even just folks with a relationship here, some history here, some understanding of what this city has been and what it's growing towards, what it all of that, right? Like, we really want to be intentional about that. And so the campus ambassadors in our organization go back to the universities that they graduated from to talk about our opportunities to connect with the students at networking events and what have you. And one of the things that I have to make sure that I champion is like, hey, y'all need to go back and connect with the folks that you don't see here, right? And so, if you were in Sigma Alpha Epsilon while you was in school, you might want to go and connect with Alpha Kappa Alpha or Omega Psi Phi to talk to them about these opportunities as well, so that they can also know, right? Or just generally going to the Office of Greek Life, who will be able to connect back to all of the orgs, IFC, MPHC, et cetera, right? I think it's just really, really being intentional about understanding where diversity lives in the spaces that you have access to and sharing broadly, right? And then the spaces that you have access to exclusively, going there and being a champion for diversity, right? If I'm with a bunch of other Black men, I'm not going to get there and be different with them than I would be with a group of women, a group of white people, a group of any other kind of folks, right? Like, I want to be the same and consistent there. And if I feel very passionately about equality, then that's what I need to be bringing to that space, right? And I think a true ally is going to do just that, man. That, I don't think that answer was perfect, but I hope y'all can get what I'm trying to lay down.
No, that was fine. That was just fine. No, that was great. That was all really good stuff. And it really is, doing the reaching out and, like you said, being your authentic self with all groups of people, not changing, who you are with who you're talking to. And Monique, since I know you need to run in just a minute, let me throw this last question to you, and then I'll go to you, Stephanie. So Monique, before you leave, is there anything else that you would like to share with our students here today, as well as, of course, like I said, this is being recorded, so this will be on our YouTube channel soon. So what else would you like to share regarding your representation, why it matters, and just how do we make sure that we have those truly inclusive work environments?
So a couple of things. Thank you, Lori. So I want to piggyback off of what Nicholas said. I think it's important for employees to be allies, but it's not difficult to do, and students can start to do that now. So I am a very passionate ally and advocate of veterans, not only because I am one, but because I see that that is an underrepresented area that we need to focus attention on in the spaces that I've been. So it's very easy for me then to just start my allyship in that area. And so what I would say to students is find that one area that you're passionate about and then focus your energy there. And then that will help you grow in those other areas. And then the other thing that I would say is just be supportive, right? I think sometimes we get stereotypes and we hear about how things can be. I was very lucky to start my career with a woman leader. And I mentioned early, not just a woman leader, but a Black woman leader. But the leaders around her were women as well. And they poured into me. But my biggest ally was our EVP, and he was a white male. So I think that's what you look for. And all of us can start doing that on our own in our own spaces, as Nicholas mentioned. And then the last thing that I would say that I would want to leave students with as you're going through your college career, as you're starting your job search, be very intentional about the spaces and the people that you want to be around, and don't compromise on that. Because if you do it now, then it will be very easy for you to find yourself doing it when you go to work. And I want you to step into that courage that you have and bring that into your workplace. Be intentional about it. I think Nicholas was great. Pick those battles, but be intentional about it and be courageous enough to do it, to say something, to make a stand. Don't necessarily put yourself in harm's way and ruin your opportunities, but do really think about where is it that I want to be and what kind of people do I want to spend 8, 9, 10 hours with, because that's going to impact ultimately your happiness and your mental health. I think Stephanie alluded to that a little earlier, so I kind of let her lean into that a little bit. But as someone who had to make those tough decisions, don't be afraid to do that. You will land where you need to be, but put it in your head now to start thinking about that and ask those questions. And I think that that will help you as you go down this journey of being in college, graduating, and then starting in the workplace.
Fantastic. What a wonderful note and I know you've got to go on to another chat. So thank you so much for joining us, Monique. And then when I looked at the clock, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, the time has flown by. So it is almost time for us to wrap up for everyone. So I can't believe how quickly it goes. So Stephanie, I will go ahead and ask you as well. What other thoughts, advice would you like to share with our students? And if any of our students have any questions or comments, feel free to go ahead and put that in the chat. Diane is monitoring the chat for us today. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and put that in the chat. So Stephanie, what else would you like to add to this conversation and share with our students?
That was wonderful. I would say just piggybacking right on she said, that you be intentional about the places you choose to be. There is nothing more important than your circle of influence right now, and it carries forward through into your adult life, your professional life, the choices you're making right now. And being an ally doesn't mean being confrontational. It means being okay saying, hey, that statement was maybe not cool, or changing the direction of a conversation, or educating someone in the conversation. Did you know perhaps that that person speaks 4 languages, not just one, whereas most Americans speak only one? So really I feel like the dumb one. I will always defer and say things that way. So not being afraid to be a little bit humble in your speech when you're saying it, but taking the opportunity to educate others in your environment. And I am a big fan of saying to someone, I am not comfortable with this situation. It's not something that I think is a good fit, right? You have the right to say that and removing yourself. Thankfully, Marel, I alluded to earlier, going through some sickness with my very first corporate job. And I was not excited about returning to a corporation, but I was recommended by a friend. And thankfully, I did take the interview. And part of the reason for that was because of the culture of that company. So great name throughout the world in which they lived, but internally, that language was on paper, as was mentioned before, but what was actually put into practice on a day-to-day basis, only we knew. And that did take a toll. It was a lot of mental stress. You were recognized for your talent, but not necessarily for who you were, the skin that you were in. So I chose to step away from that. And in so doing, with my own business, I really was able to come into myself and be able to become more comfortable with who I was and the gifts that we offer and bring to the table. And why isn't it okay for me to wear my hair this way? Why isn't it okay for me to talk about things that are important to me? And Marel has provided that space. So they're smart enough to know what they don't know, right? So they are based in Iceland. They're a European company, but they know what they don't know. There are not a lot of minorities in Iceland. So when they came abroad here, it's wow. They're actually fascinated with my hair. They want to know more. They established a whole D&I department, hired someone especially to train them on what they do not know. There are terms like LGBTQTP, that does not exist in Iceland at all. They use a word that translates to sexual deviant, which if they said that to someone here would be highly offensive. So they're smart enough to know what they do not know, and they're willing to take that journey to become educated. As long as you have a space that allows you to do that, to grow and to speak freely, and that will encourage that continual conversation, that's a great place to be. The minute you even feel the slightest notion of something is just not right, I just didn't like the way that made me feel, or something was implied that wasn't quite right, trust your gut. 9 times out of 10, you're not wrong, but it doesn't mean you have to make a scene about it. You be the professional always. I love Michelle Obama always says, they go low, we go high. It's so true. That's my life's motto. I've had to deal with it more than I've ever wanted to in a variety of situations, my children as well. But it's something you learn how to deal with, and in the process, you become better, you become stronger for it, and you educate yourself. You learn a lot more from people than you think if you listen, as Nicholas mentioned. And you learn, most importantly, that we are more alike than we are different. The only thing that changes on the outside is the shade, the level of tan we have, right? So mine is a little lighter than Nicholas's. Mine is definitely lighter than some of our relatives. But guess what? They may eat more fried chicken than I do. They may eat more watermelon than I do. Those stereotypes disappear, they melt away, and you learn so much more about who you are as well. So just be open to those conversations and really choose your circle of influence well.
Right. No, definitely. And I really liked how, Monique had mentioned as well about, really interviewing that employer and understanding where they are. And I know Marel has been at several of our career fairs. And so it's nice to see that a company like that can come on our campus and, is looking for that top talent, making sure that it's a truly diverse and inclusive talent applicant pool that they're looking for, because our students are, run the gamut as well. And so it's so nice to know that they have opportunities with companies that will genuinely care for them and care about their career and make sure that, they're well looked after. So we are coming up to the very, very end. So Nicholas, I'll let you have the last word. So if you've got any parting words, any parting advice that you have for our students.
Sure. Yeah. So I think this is what I share at any of these sessions that I leave. It doesn't matter what the topic is. I think that this is the most important thing that I can tell anybody who is early in their careers and has just met me or a bunch of people who do what I do and are looking to maybe land an opportunity at one of our organizations. I think it's really, really helpful and useful to hear from recruiters and hear from sourcers and to talk to them and have an understanding of what the recruiting timeline is like and what opportunities might be available, or, what's the application process like, right? But I think the real genuine, most impactful relationships that you're going to make are going to be the ones with the people who are doing the work that you're trying to do, right? And so unless you're looking for a job as a recruiter, I don't know that talking to me is going to be the most useful way to spend your time, right? And I want you to be intentional about what you're doing and how you want to, get from point A to point B. I think that, man, it's just as far as advice that was given today, being intentional about how you interview, and what companies you're interviewing, and then also interviewing those companies so that you know who it is that you're meeting. That's amazing advice, and I can't echo that enough. I'm grateful to have just been really, really, really indignant and not wanting to do what I not want to do, right? And being intentional about only doing the things that I want to do has allowed me to get to where I am now. And as a Black person in corporate America, like I do not code switch anymore. It is something that my colleagues love about their experience with me, because I'm going to be very much myself. I'm going to speak in some slang from time to time, just going to be me. But I had to find the place and the space that I could do that in, and I had to get to that place, right? I do recruiting, so I talked to recruiters, and I had to understand that, yeah, BlackRock was a place where I could come and be very much myself and be welcomed, right? If you want to go into asset management, if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be an engineer at Apple or Google or something, go talk to those people, right? Go talk to those people. They're going to be able to best advise you on how to be successful in your career, in that career development. They will also be the best advocates for you internally at the organization. Monique mentioned Inroads, and that's an amazing organization, and they were at Pitt when I was there. And there were just not enough inroads for me and some of my friends to be able to walk down, right? And so I learned that I had to build my own, and you might have to build some of your own inroads. And, you want to do that with the people who are doing the work that you're trying to do. You want to be able to literally walk down that same path, right? So I definitely encourage that. And if inclusion and diversity is something that is important to you, then you don't just go and you meet those engineers or those scientists or those advertisers or whomever, whatever it is that your field is. You don't just go and meet them. You go and meet the women of the most underrepresented population at that organization, and then you ask them about their experience. That I think that's how you really get a way to understand that place, right? And understand, will you have the opportunity to be seen? Are people being seen and treated fairly? And are they getting the opportunities to really grow towards their career and professional goals, right? Like, those are the conversations that you need to have. Those are the people that you should be having them with. Please don't hesitate to reach out and connect with folks like myself. You know what I mean? And definitely you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Nicholas Pratt here at BlackRock. So it should not be hard to find. But spend your time wisely and intentionally, and really meet the folks who are going to help you get to that next step and that next level in your career. Thank y'all for having me. I really appreciate being here. This has been awesome.
Oh, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
it's been
I
great.
really appreciate it. And while I kind of wrap things up right here at the end, we've got our last poll. It has a two-part to it. No, three-part, sorry. Has a three-part to it. So keep scrolling down. There's a couple of parts to the poll. So go ahead and give us some feedback on what kind of information you gained and regarding to your achieving your career goals, motivated to achieve those career goals, and feeling more confident about that as well. So just keep on scrolling there on
And
that poll and take a moment to do that.
1 through 5, 5 being strongly agree
Yes.
with the statement.
Yes. And then again, for any of you who had joined a little bit later, if you are here with the College of Business and you're looking for your pros credit, if in your little Zoom box, it only has your first name or just some initials, please make sure your first and last name are in the chat if you haven't done that yet. So that way Diane can get that written down, because in Zoom, when I do the attendance roster, it only has exactly what is in your little box. So some of you have only a first name, some have some initials there. So if you have not already done so, make sure you put that in the chat, so that way we can make sure we get the credit to you, because I know that's an important piece to make sure you get that. But thank you everyone for being here. All of our students, thank you so much for taking the time. I know our students are really busy as well, especially because I know that the the semester is really kicked off now. So you're getting the exams and the projects and everything's starting to pile on right about now. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day. And again, thank you so much, Nicholas and Stephanie. I know that it's a lot in your schedule, and thank you so much. And Stephanie, gosh, I'm sorry I guess you're going to be taking off pretty soon if you're at the airport.
I'll eventually leave the parking lot, yes.
Oh,
But I'm
goodness.
safe, it's okay. I
Yeah.
just wanted to say thank you as well. And if any of the students ever want to reach out, they can always chat with me. And I try to set them up with hiring managers so that they can have those informal chats to hear more about positions. So
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. And again, thank you, everyone. I hope you have a lovely evening. I will go ahead and stop recording. And again, this video will be on our YouTube channel in a couple of days. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for being here.